Well, good afternoon to you. Great to have you with us. It is 3:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up today, Gabriel Noronha joins us in just minutes from now. We'll talk to him about all those missiles away, the conflict in the Middle East only growing now. Joe Biden, you trust him to run a war on our behalf? We'll get into the details ahead. Dr. Kevin Roberts is here at 4 o'clock with the Heritage Foundation. We chat with him about his trip next week to go confront the World Economic Forum. Congressman Andy Harris is here at 4:30. Mark Morgan talks the border at 5. And Gabe Kaminsky from the Washington Examiner at 5:30. A packed show today. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. The United States and the United Kingdom working together yesterday to conduct airstrikes against the Houthi rebels in Yemen. Axios reporting here. After the group defied repeated warnings to halt its attacks on merchant and commercial vessels in the Red Sea. A huge percentage of the nation's shipping goes through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, and the Houthis, supported by, funded by, and really directed by Iran, have been making life hell for all of the vessels that have been moving through the area. This is their effort to support Hamas. For more on this, I do want to bring in Gabriel Noronha now, Executive Director of Polaris National Security and a former State Department advisor on Iran as well. Gabriel, good to have you with us.
Absolutely. Great to be here. And you've got a great show lined up today.
Thank you. Very busy today. And of course, that's because the news dictates that we need to be busy today, Gabriel. So let's just talk about how we got here. What the Houthis, like, for those of us who don't follow this, every little detail of this, one thing that's been clear for a while is that Iran funds and directs and gives intelligence to the Houthis, Hamas, and Hezbollah. What are we seeing play out right now in the Red Sea?
Well, first, here's what you should know about the Houthis. Their slogan is, God is great, death to America, death to Israel, curse on the Jews, victory to Islam. So that's their slogan. It's a little long, but tells you pretty much everything you need to know. They're an Iranian proxy, and they've been directed by Iran, really, to cause problems in the Red Sea, to try to pose the penalty on Israel, try to impose some costs, but also just to get more support abroad. And we've seen, shockingly, even protests at the White House in favor of the Houthis and coming out against these strikes. It would be a criminal act to do that if the Houthis were actually still on the Foreign Terrorist Organization watch list. Biden took them off in the early days of the administration, so now you can legally go and support these terrorists.
Yeah, so when you have a terror designation, and as you point out, it was Trump who imposed the terror designation on this group, and it was Biden who removed it in his early days in office. When you impose a terror designation on an organization like the Houthis, what is the impact of that? Logistically, what does that do to that organization, and what does it prevent from happening?
Yeah, so if right now I tweeted that I supported ISIS and pledged my support to them, I could go and get locked up in U.S. prison for 5 to 10 years for supporting a terror organization. Or if I, sent them money in a donation, I'd go to prison too. And so when Trump put on the Houthis on this list, what it did was it hurt their fundraising, it hurt their ability to get financial and food support from abroad, and it prevented people from wanting to go and join the group. And so that was why we call terrorist organizations, to try to limit their ability to expand and carry out their attacks. One of the things that Biden did is he just removed the designation out the gate. No negotiations with the Houthis, no concessions from them, just said, we want to end the civil war in Yemen, so we're going to withdraw effectively from this whole conflict whatsoever. And one thing he did that was, I think, very unwise is he cut off arms sales to Saudi Arabia for the war. Now, Americans might not love everything about Saudi Arabia. They're not a perfect country. But the good thing was they were buying our weapons to go kill terrorists who chant death to America. Now what we've seen in these attacks is the U.S. using its own very expensive missiles to have to do that job for them. And so that to me is not a win.
But I also saw that I think the Saudis are actually calling on us to calm things down and not be striking like the Houthis right now. So there's once again, as in all things in the Middle East, it's very messy at this moment.
It is. So part of it is because the U.S. walked away from this fight for a long time, the Saudis recently came to sort of a ceasefire agreement with the Houthis. And they are tired of war. They've been fighting this for over 5 years, and they just want the problem to go away. And so they are urging de-escalation. They're trying to urge both sides to stop firing at each other, because what they want, Yemen is on their southern border. They just don't want a war on their border.
So my impression, and you correct me if I'm wrong, of the Biden administration is that most of the steps they've taken in the region have been designed to appease, placate, or suck up to Iran. And that sounds like also taking the Houthis off the terror designation list is a part of that.
It's all part of this giant appeasement strategy. You're spot on. You're spot on. And it's based on this premise that if you act nicely and you give financial concessions to countries that hate us, that they will use that money and say, oh, we're going to reduce our tensions with the U.S. And we all know that that's not what happens. We've known and we've seen this every time it happens in the world, that when you give terrorists more money, they just use it to fund more terror. That's what's happened here. And Iran sends missiles, drones, rifles, RPGs to the Houthis in boats.
Yes.
And so the U.S. Navy, and I'll give the Biden administration credit here and there. They've actually interdicted a bunch of these boats on their way to Yemen with these missiles. And that's what we should be doing more of. We should be saying, look, you want to go fight a war against us? We're not going to give you or allow you to get the weapons to do that.
But the Biden administration's decision to free up billions of dollars in the form of sanctions relief or allowing money to go to the Iranians, that all seems like it's added up to what we're experiencing today, that things are only getting worse and that the Iranians are making it so. Could all of this have been prevented if the Biden administration hadn't been so generous with Iran, both financially and in terms of taking terror designations away from these proxies?
Absolutely. Let me tell you what Iran looked like in December 2020. At the tail end, after 2 years of the policy that I was putting on, they were in economic collapse. Their inflation was 55%. They couldn't raise new bond issuances. They were going bankrupt. And they started cutting off their terror groups. They called them and said, hey, sorry, we don't have money anymore. Sanctions have dried up our budget for supporting you guys.
Yes.
And that's where they were. And then what Biden did is he released all the sanctions and flowed all the money back to the regime. And so you're absolutely right. This is started when Biden refused to enforce our U.S. sanctions.
So why, Gabriel Noronha, does Iran want to provoke us? What do they detect as the upside in initiating a war with the United States?
Their grand desire right now is to kick the United States out of the Middle East entirely. What they would like to see is they would like to see all our troops out of Iraq, where we're there at the invitation of the Iraqi government. They want us out of Saudi Arabia. They want us out of Israel. They want Israel out of the Middle East. They want them wiped off ultimately. And what they think they can do is that if they harass us enough, we will back down and leave so that we don't get attacked anymore. And it would be very dangerous if we make their wish come true. Obviously, Americans don't want, no one wants forever wars. No one wants boots on the ground forever. But the issue is if we give in to Iran, they get what they want and they get to control the region. And let me just tell you, this is not a country, this is not a regime that you want taking over and controlling the Middle East.
It's amazing. But then again, at the same time, I am worried about this administration and its decision-making in literally every realm of the government. But today, we do have the news that the United States, and I understand that the Biden administration is trying to represent this as a multi-nation effort. And I'm sure there were other nations, of course, that were involved in this. But as always, just like with NATO, just like with the United Nations, it's the United States that's ultimately doing this. The president ordering these strikes in Yemen, what is this going to accomplish, do you think?
If this were done properly, we would have just taken out the Houthi leaders entirely. We know where they are, probably. We would have taken out all their weapons caches. But what happened instead was yesterday during the day, you started hearing from U.S. and British officials saying, tonight there's going to be strikes. If you're a Houthi sitting in Yemen, you're going to read that and you're going to move all your sensitive assets out of the warehouses. Your leadership is going to go underground. And that's exactly what happened. So these strikes, it killed 5 people, wounded 6 people. If we had been serious, if we wanted these attacks to stop, we would have done a decapitation strike. Instead, what we saw was this morning, the Houthi spokesperson said, this is not going to stop us. We're going to continue attacking Israel. We're going to continue attacking ships in the Red Sea. So Biden said this was about deterring the Houthis. Well, just read what they're saying. They're not deterred. They do not believe that this was serious enough to make them stop.
Well, they also claim that for every U.S. strike on them, that they will escalate well beyond where they have been. Should we take that seriously?
These guys don't have that much to be able to do that with. They're kind of isolated on this peninsula in the Middle East. I don't take that threat super seriously. I think they're doing everything they can right now to harass us and annoy us. I don't think they're capable, like Al-Qaeda, like Hezbollah, to do something like that.
Okay, you don't think so? So when we think about the role that kind of each of these groups plays, these proxy groups for Iran, my impression is that Hezbollah is among the best armed. That they are.
They're the varsity team.
And so the Houthis are not anywhere near where Hezbollah is. They're not because right now, I mean, they are proving to be a menace in the Red Sea and debilitating a meaningful percentage of global shipping.
Yeah. I was in Saudi Arabia last week and talking to their leaders, and they were joking, the Houthis are a bunch of cowboys. They can go fire pistols and they can go harass us and cause problems with us. And they are becoming more sophisticated. They've got a couple of helicopters, but at the end of the day, they're a smaller outfit. They can harass a lot. Now, that being said, a lot of people thought Hamas was just a little upstart group until they did what we saw on October 7th.
That's right.
We should never, I remember Obama called ISIS the JV team back 10 years ago.
Yes.
And then we saw what ISIS did. So we should never take our eye off the ball with these terror groups. We should never underestimate them. That being said, in the pecking order, I think they're pretty small fries.
Finally, I am concerned to what extent we face risks or threats back at home. I saw there was a report, because of our wide open border, there was a report this past year that indicated that Fox had this, that hundreds of special interest aliens have poured across our open border from Yemen. They point directly to a number 139 from Yemen up through late last year. And I'm sure that's got to be a pretty meaningful undercount of the actual number of illegals who've crossed our border from Yemen specifically. Are these the kinds of things we should be concerned about?
Absolutely. 130 from Yemen, I think 600 from Syria, 400 from Afghanistan. These are the folks who we're catching. This to me is almost like if we had, Dulles Airport or JFK Airport, if you got to the customs line and you didn't have to check your passport, you could just walk straight in. That's what our border is right now. It's the easiest way to get into the United States. And, 9/11 was done for $1 million with 20 guys who came in with box cutters. If we don't think that another 9/11 is possible right now, we have a lack of imagination. And that is the most dangerous thing. Frankly, I'm surprised we haven't had something happen already. To me, it is a matter of time. And I think the FBI director testified to the Congress recently. He said, there are blinking red lights everywhere. That concerns me really deeply.
Gabriel Noronha, Executive Director from Polaris National Security, former State Department official in the Trump administration. Sir, thank you very much for your time today.
Always a pleasure.
Well, good afternoon to you. 3:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up today on the program, Dr. Kevin Roberts, the president of the Heritage Foundation, will be here with us at 4 o'clock. He's off to the World Economic Forum next week to confront them. We will talk to him about that. Congressman Andy Harris is here at 4:30. We'll give you an update on the left's insanity in his home state of Maryland. And then Mark Morgan is here at 5 o'clock. We talk about the border battle. Texas is now in a standoff with the feds. We'll get into that with Mark. And then Gabe Kaminsky joins us at 5:30 from the Washington Examiner. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. All right, first, Joe Biden is on the road today in very controlled environments. They're having him stop by small businesses in the Lehigh Valley area of Pennsylvania, pretending to do retail politics. He's just honestly shuffling around and being nonsensical. In fact, today he walked into a coffee shop, and according to all of the videos I'm seeing here, the audio is a little rough, but I think everyone's got the transcript right. My name's Joe Biden. I work for the government in the Senate, was his introduction today, apparently, in this coffee shop. Take a listen to this and see if it sounds like that.
My name's Joe Biden. I work for the government in the Senate.
People are laughing, nervous laughter. Oh, in the Senate. Okay. Yeah, whatever. My name's Joe Biden. I work for the government in the Senate. Maybe that guy should not be prosecuting a war with anyone right now. Maybe somebody else should be in charge. He says he works for the government in the Senate. He was already asked, he was asked today as well about delivering messages to Iran. What's your message to Iran?
I've already delivered the message to Iran. They know not to do anything.
They know not to do anything.
Do you continue bombing the Houthis if the attacks don't stop, sir?
Say that again?
Continue bombing the Houthis if the attacks don't stop. Will you continue with the strikes, sir?
We will make sure that we respond to the Houthis if they continue this outrageous behavior, along with our allies.
Yeah, he says we're going to keep going after the Houthis for as long as they continue their outrageous behavior. He was also asked, do you have confidence in Secretary Lloyd Austin? Lloyd Austin lied to the American people over the course of the last week, did not indicate that he was hospitalized. Nobody around him indicated that. Nobody told, apparently, the White House, although we can't be certain that that's true. And then, of course, the public doesn't know that the Secretary of Defense of all people was completely out of commission. So does Joe Biden care that he was lied to?
Do you have confidence in Secretary Austin?
I do.
I'm sorry. How you doing?
Was it a lapse in judgment for him not to tell you earlier?
Yes.
Interesting. He says he has confidence in Lloyd Austin. Was it a lapse in judgment for him to not tell you earlier? Yes, says Biden. Biden was also asked, are we in a proxy war with Iran right now? The answer to that is obviously yes.
Are we in a de facto proxy war with Iran?
Say again?
Are we in a de facto proxy war with
No. Iran does not want to war with us.
Yeah, I think he said Iran does not want a war with us. Sorry, bud, we're in it. What do you think fighting the Houthis is? I love how it was like 2 weeks ago, the Biden administration came out with some sort of intelligence that they leaked to the press. They said, U.S. finds evidence that Houthis are using Iranian intelligence in order to attack ships in the Red Sea. Yeah, no kidding. The Iranians are manufacturing this whole thing. What? Iran supports the Houthis? What are you going to tell me next? That they support Hezbollah and Hamas? Yes, of course they do. Now, again today, this is all just coming out now. This is in the last few minutes. A reporter asked Biden, are you willing to call the Houthis a terrorist group? Biden says, I think they are. I'm sorry, what?
Are you willing to call the Houthis a terrorist group, sir?
I think they are.
What is strike success last night, sir?
Now, I should tell you, because the radio doesn't do it justice, the look on his face is blank, like he's very confused. His brow is furrowed. He's looking around the room like he's trying to figure out what to say next. He was just asked, are you willing to call the Houthis a terrorist group? He says, I think they are. Now, the key point here is Biden removed the terror designation at the beginning of his presidency. So he thought they were a terror group, but that we shouldn't say it officially?
What is strike success last night, sir?
Yes. I don't think there's any civilian casualties. That's another reason why it's a success.
He said the strike was a success overnight. So that's Biden today. So some updates, some breaking news updates for you on what Joe Biden is up to. Now, while he's bopping around and drinking juice, it looks like he's holding a juice in his hands. He is not addressing the crisis on our nation's southern border. That continues, mostly unabated, although Texas is now stepping up today to take over control of a small section, a 2.5-mile stretch of our southern border in Eagle Pass, Texas. The way Eagle Pass actually flows, it's actually to the west of Eagle Pass, Texas, is where the border is. If you zoom in close enough, you can see it's actually due west to get into Mexico. But it is, yes, our southern border. It's a 2.5-mile stretch of that border. And the United States Department of Justice is now accusing Texas of blocking Border Patrol agents, that's because they are, from accessing those 2.5 miles. ABC News reports that the filing that the Justice Department filed last night about this comes as the justices on the Supreme Court are weighing an emergency request from the Biden administration seeking immediate permission for the Border Patrol to remove razor wire fencing installed by the state of Texas along a 29-mile stretch of the border with Mexico. So Texas has been using concertina wire to stop foreign nationals from illegally invading the country. The Biden administration wants to help the foreign nationals illegally invade the country. So they'd like to remove all 29 miles of that razor wire. The administration has argued that the states cannot restrain federal officials from carrying out their duties and that federal officials have primary responsibility for immigration policy and enforcement along the border. An injunction issued by a lower court against the removal is not warranted while litigation proceeds because of the risk to human life posed by the wire and because of the supremacy of federal law enforcement, the administration has argued. Here, I know how to stop the risk to human life. Don't create incentives for people to take the dangerous journey. That's how you stop the risk. The state responded in its filing to the court that removing the razor wire fencing refutes the federal government's intended purpose of enforcing immigration policy. Quote, defendants may not seek judicial blessing of practices that both directly contravene those same statutory obligations and require the destruction of the plaintiff's property, the state said. In other words, the feds have an obligation to secure the border, and they're failing. And they don't get to destroy state property in pursuit of something that's already illegal, which is allowing foreign nationals to pour across it. The court has not yet said when it will weigh in on the matter. According to the DOJ filing, Border Patrol agents were informed on Wednesday, that's 2 days ago, that state authorities were fencing off the area surrounding Shelby Park. It's a known staging area for the U.S. Border Patrol, the Texas National Guard, and Texas Department of Public Safety. The DOJ said that the Texas National Guard is now blocking Border Patrol's access and rendering its agents unable to place mobile surveillance trucks. The filing also says agents were denied access to a boat ramp used to access the Rio Grande, as well as a staging area it uses to inspect migrants who are apprehended while crossing into Texas between ports of entries. If you were to zoom in on Shelby Park, if you just were to enter that into a search engine and zoom in on it, you can see the boat ramp that they're talking about in the aerial imagery. But the way that the ABC News piece is representing this, and certainly the way the Biden administration is representing this, they're saying, well, the Border Patrol really wants to get in there. They really want to be in that area to, I don't know, do what? To move more illegals into the country. That is not true, according to the Border Patrol Union and Border Patrol agents who've been speaking with members of the press. They're thrilled about this. Although they're being instructed by the Biden administration to go there and being blocked by Texas, the rank and file Border Patrol agents are pumped that somebody is finally enforcing border security in the area. Again, albeit a small area. This is just 2.5 miles. But now you have, how about this for being long overdue? The Texas National Guard saying, yeah, nobody's allowed in here, including the Border Patrol. Because when we let the Border Patrol in, DHS forces them to cut open the concertina wire and to allow people into our country. We're not doing that. So the Texas National Guard has established its own border perimeter on a very small portion of the border. Of course, for most of us, we probably want it to extend the whole border, see how much more Texas can take. But it sounds like this park, at least, they feel like they've got some right to do it there. So, again, we'll share updates with you as we get them on this story. We do have coming up with us Mark Morgan at 5 o'clock. He's the former acting commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection. And I'm sure he's got some very interesting things to say about all of this, about what's happening down there. It is a weird one, though. It's, how hardball does the Biden administration go on this? Do they get into a standoff of some kind with the Texas National Guard? Doesn't sound like a good idea. Not good for the country, not good for Texas, not good for anybody, for the Border Patrol. What is going to happen? How much are they going to accelerate this? Because it seems like they're willing to do anything. It's like kind of an at-all-costs plan by the Biden administration to allow foreign nationals to come in. If they're willing to cut up buoys and cut up concertina wire, what aren't they willing to do for the benefit of illegal immigrants? Let me go to the phones now. I've got Michael calling in from Arlington now on line 1. Michael, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Yeah, Vince, we're at a point now where we need to start not pretending that our enemies are stupid. And yes, the Democrats in office, the administration, they have declared themselves my enemy. I am now in a position where, celebrating the 3rd anniversary of J6, I have to worry about the FBI knocking on my door because I may have stepped on a blade of grass that my tax dollars paid for at the Capitol. I'm also dealing with the same government that is now making Texans, Chicagoans, New Yorkers, hell, Martha's Vineyard people are having to deal with illegal aliens standing in their yard, and there's not a damn thing they can do about it. It is time to stop this. It is time for 17 million veterans to get their collective heads out of their fourth point of contact and decide this is no longer acceptable, it is not normal, and it does not follow a constitutional republic to allow this crap to happen. And until that happens, until the right says no more, it will continue. And I hope that Governor Abbott starts a program like in Israel where you don't have to be Jewish to go to Israel and fight for Israel, just like the Ukrainians did. I hope Texas, when it comes head-to-head, that they'll do an amnesty program where I can go to Texas and stay on the damn border. I will be happy to.
Yeah, sometimes, you look at some of these sheriffs across the country, right, when the left comes after people's gun rights, and some of these great sheriffs all across the country say, that's fine, I'll just deputize every citizen in the area, and they can all carry a gun if you're going to come after the gun rights. Yeah.
At a certain level, we're obstructing, I'm sorry, Abbott is obstructing federal enforcement from getting to the border. I'm sorry, the feds own a bunch of damn helicopters. You don't need to step on one blade of Texas grass to get to that border.
Yeah. All right. Hey,
and
thank you, Michael.
You to step on one blade of it, and Abbott should literally have, every time they try to go out there in a vehicle, he should set up a roadblock.
Yeah. Well, look, that is, Michael, thank you for that. And you're right about the arguments that the feds are making here. It's like, hey, you can't, this is the supremacy clause. The federal government's in charge. It's the immigration policy of the United States. Really? First of all, you're not enforcing the law. That's one. And two, as a result, you are running afoul of the constitutional obligation you have to prevent an invasion of Texas and every other state in this country, as Michael points out. And so thus, the argument that these attorneys general have been making on the border are that the constitutional argument is we're being invaded. And the Constitution specifically lays out that we need to be protected from that. And if the federal government fails us, that we can take this up. And that's what Texas is doing. So we'll see. We'll see what happens here. But it's a fight worth having, as Michael points out. It's a fight worth having. If you want to have a country, if you want sovereignty, if you'd like to have some sense of who's here and have the people decide who comes in, the only way you do that is by making sure that you have sound walls and a functioning door. And right now we have neither. There's all sorts of reasons the left wants the border to stay open. Among them is they do like having an underclass to pick their food, or at least that's how Jerry Nadler sees it. Here's Jerry Nadler yesterday.
We need immigrants in this country. Forget the fact that that our vegetables would rot in the ground if they weren't being picked by many immigrants, many illegal immigrants. The fact is that the birth rate in this country is way below replacement level.
Yeah, so, oh my gosh, are you listening to this guy? So we need to replace Americans, says the Democrat. Replacement theory, anybody? And we also don't have enough people to pick the food that we eat. So we need an underclass of people who are here illegally, off the books, who can be underpaid in order to pick the vegetables I stuff in my fat face. What is that rationale? And it's not the first time a Democrat has said something like that. In fact, a lot of Democrats sound like that. Here's Nancy Pelosi through her dentures.
When the growers saying, why are you shipping these immigrants up north? We need them to pick the crops down here.
Yeah, we need illegals to pick our crops. Why are you sending them north? Debbie Wasserman Schultz down in Florida. She says, you've got to have these illegals picking vegetables. It's the only way I'm going to get any.
Agriculture. I mean, you're going to have vegetables rotting in the fields. You're going to have construction sites that will lie dormant or certainly will struggle to get workers to be able to help make sure that they can make progress.
Geniuses, all of them, including the congressman who thought that Guam would flip over if too many people stood on one side of the island.
Those folk who are coming across are the ones who are helping to put food on our table. Without them, we're not able to eat. If you turn them away, if all of them were turned away, and then this legislation passed, making it easier to get at people who are already here legally, and you have no immigration, then we would have no food on our plates. We would have nobody taking care of the building, the construction of our homes. We would have nobody cleaning up in the hospitals.
Once again, Democrats throughout history always looking for another class of people to exploit. Here they are saying it out in the open. Oh, we need people to do all of this work so we can underpay them, of course. If they're illegal, who are they going to complain to? The government? Ha! Ha! I say. Oh, these ridiculous, bigoted Democrats. Not looking out for us. Looking out for themselves. They need vegetables, you see. Coming up, Dr. Kevin Roberts will be with us from the Heritage Foundation. He's off to meet with the globalists at the World Economic Forum. We'll find out what his message for them is.